folks. Welcome to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors, July 17th, 2018 meeting. I will ask us all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Folks, remind everyone to please silence all your cell phones and other devices, and also to remind audience members that there may be audio or video recordings by third parties during this public meeting. Item number 4 on our agenda is a Sunoco Matter 2 update. I will hand that over to our attorney on that matter, Mr. Bruin. Mr. Bruin, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the audience. By way of brief update on our current litigation, as many people know, we have filed suit back roughly a year ago against Sunoco for the placement of valves associated with ME2. The hearing in that closed in April. Briefing concluded in June, and we expect a decision from Administrative Law Judge Elizabeth Barnes probably before the 1st of August. That would be the recommendation, and then either party can file exceptions to the full PUC, and they've anticipated taking the matter up at their September meeting. The other point of information for the board and also for the public is that it came to our attention on or about July 3rd. Sunoco filed with FERC PHMSA a filing which would enable them, because of the delays associated with the Mariner 2 pipeline, to basically repurpose a 12-inch line that runs from Marcus Hook to Redding. Nothing was publicly available on the website through the PUC or through PHMSA because it's confidential. So we weren't able to tell exactly what the alignment was or what the valve spacing was or really anything about this 12-inch line. We met with representatives of Sunoco Logistics on July 11th, last Wednesday, confirmed that it is part of the Mariner 2 project. They are basically doing this because of the delays of getting the other 16 to 20-inch lines in. They began integrity testing in 2016 of this line, and the notice they submitted to PHMSA on July 3rd was the required 60-day notice, which at the end of that 60 days, or on or about September 3rd, they'd be able to operate the line. West Goshen requested at that meeting in July 11 information pursuant to our settlement agreement so that we could perform, or actually have our expert Richard Kupowitz of Equifax perform a safety review akin to what was done for Mariner East 1 and Mariner East 2. We heard back today from Sunoco that they are willing to provide that information under confidentiality agreements that are in place since 2014. So with the board's understanding and permission, we'll be reactivating Richard Kupowitz and having him perform a safety review of this 12-inch line, and that would include both the sort of nature and extent of the line, the testing that was done, integrity testing that was done, very much like he did for the Mariner 1 and Mariner 1 project, because this is very much like the repurposed 8-inch line. He'll look at valve spacing, etc., and provide recommendations and opinions in regard to the safety of the line. So that's our intent. Any questions?
From the audience? Any questions from any board members? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Bruin.
You got it. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is with great pleasure, the West Goshen Township Police Department commendations and awards, and then over to Chief Gleason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor of making some presentations this evening, and the first one is not a member of this agency, but he is a member of the Westchester Fire Department, and I would like to read a synopsis which would lead up to this, but I would ask Jamie Harkins, please, if you could step forward here. Just come up here to my left. Thank you. On November 11, 2017, at approximately 12:25 p.m., police, fire, and emergency medical personnel were dispatched to the intersection of Route 202 and South Matlack Street for a motor vehicle crash reported serious. The crash involved 7 passenger vehicles and 1 tractor trailer. One of the passenger vehicles quickly becoming involved in flames, as was the tractor trailer. A motorist and volunteer firefighter driving along Route 202 witnessed this horrific crash. James Jamie Harkins immediately stopped his vehicle and ran towards the burning wreckage. Long before other emergency responders began to arrive on scene, Jamie put his own safety on the line and, without any protective gear, began to make every effort to access the burning vehicle to remove its occupants. While begging others to help, Jamie smashed out the passenger window of the burning vehicle and pulled a female passenger out to safety. Knowing that time was against him, Jamie returned to the burning vehicle and continued to try to remove the unconscious driver, who was pinned in the severely damaged vehicle. Jamie's efforts were only turned back by the increasing flames that overtook the passenger compartment. Jamie sustained burns in the process of his rescue efforts. Jamie's actions were truly selfless, and had he not been there at that specific time, the outcome would have been dramatically worse. So on behalf of the West Goshen Police Department, I'm proud to present James Harkins with the Citizen Commendation for Heroism. Amy had all intentions of being here this evening, but she was unable to do so at the present time. And Jamie's a low-key kind of guy, so he really doesn't like the limelight, but I appreciate him coming out and being recognized because it truly is deserving. The next I would like to ask Sergeant Anthony Storti and Officer Scott Myers to come forward, please. This is a unit commendation. During this course of several months, the northern portion of the township was experiencing a rash of thefts from vehicles and outbuildings. The members of D Platoon, Sergeant Anthony Storti, Officer Robert Gilbert, Officer Daniel Boyle, and Officer Scott Myers coordinated a plan for a concentrated patrol effort on a particular weekend overnight shift. They concentrated their efforts on the Tall Pines development. Officer Myers was patrolling and observed a pickup truck parked in the area. The vehicle was unattended at the time. Officer Myers documented the information regarding the truck and continued his patrols. He observed several items located in front of homes along the curb line, but being trash night, it wasn't too conspicuous. There was nothing really out of normal. His return to the area a short time later revealed that the vehicle was no longer in the area. Many of the items that were along the curb line earlier were no longer present. Informing his squad of his findings, he began his investigation, and Officer Gilbert went to the address of the pickup truck that Officer Myers had documented earlier. The residence was not far away, but was within West Whiteland Township. Officer Gilbert observed the subject removing numerous articles from the rear of the pickup truck, several being items observed earlier in the evening along the curb line. Sergeant Storti and Officer Gilbert approached the residence, and after some conversations and further observations, the resident was arrested and charged with numerous counts of theft, receiving stolen property, loitering and prowling at night, and criminal trespass. The actions of D Platoon led to the clearance of over 18 thefts and stolen property valued in excess of $15,000. And the defendant subsequently pled guilty and was sentenced to prison for 9 to 18 months. So on behalf of myself and the command staff, I would like to present them with a unit citation. The last one was Officer Gilbert was unable to attend this evening, but he was nominated for a merit award from his sergeant, and I would just like to read the nomination. I will present him with a certificate later. On Tuesday, May 15th at approximately 20:02 hours, 8 p.m., the department received a report of a house fire at 617 Edgewater Drive. The roof had been struck by lightning and flames were reported being seen on the east side of the roof. Officer Gilbert, Sergeant Burt, and Officer Graham responded. Officer Gilbert arrived within 1 minute and entered the residence. He went to the second floor and then climbed up into the attic. The homeowner supplied Officer Gilbert with a fire extinguisher. He entered the attic and climbed across the trusses to the east side of the roof by the eaves of the residence. He emptied the homeowner's fire extinguisher and requested other fire extinguishers, which were subsequently provided to him by Sergeants Burt and Officer Graham. After using all 3 fire extinguishers, the fire was put out as the fire company arrived. The reason for this letter is to commend Officer Gilbert for his actions. He responded very quickly, entered the attic without any concern for his own safety due to the fact that he was within a confined area. He managed to extinguish the fire before the fire company had a chance to even set up. Sergeant Burt firmly believes that Officer Gilbert's quick action saved the house from considerable damage and monetary loss, and the homeowner was very appreciative. So I present this to Officer Gilbert when he returns from vacation. We receive letters, notes, emails, Facebook notifications periodically, and I would just like to read a couple of them because they specifically mentioned officers. And this one was quite interesting to me. It said, "Today we got a ticket from the West Goshen Police Department and was treated with respect and dignity. Thank you, West Goshen and Officer Grandizio. Mutual respect goes a long way." Dear Chief Gleason, Officer Myers had an encounter with my mother. He was called to the Wawa for a well-being check. Officer Myers not only assessed the situation with compassion and warmness, but escorted my mother home to Hershey's Mill, which is not even in West Goshen Township, and then followed up with a phone call to my mother, and also contacted Hershey's Mill security to make sure that she was okay. He in turn called me back, her daughter, and answered my return call at 8:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. He offered to help us out with anything, regardless of the fact that Hershey's Mill was not in his jurisdiction. I can't begin to tell you how pleased we were as a family to have such compassionate and understanding officers in the Westchester area. I'm writing to Officer Myers telling him fully of our resolution, but I wanted you to know how exemplary Officer Miles handled the most delicate, sensitive issue for us all. Thank you, and thank West Goshen Police for employing such wonderful people. Another one was, in October, our son was having a mental health emergency, and in the early morning hours, he ran away from the Chester County Hospital, and we were following him in a car trying to keep him safe. The officers noticed that we were having problems and quickly came to our aid. Sergeant Peacock, Officer Riley, and Officer Story. Our son was in crisis, and they were so compassionate and understanding. They treated him and us with the utmost respect and dignity. They were able to get him in the car and transport him safely to the hospital, and without their help, I'm not sure what we would have done. I am sure that the officers will remember this evening and would appreciate it if you could let them know that our son is currently in treatment and improving remarkably, and we credit them with that progress. And then finally, I wanted to let you know about an incident that occurred with Officer Wes Holman on April 25th. My 4-year-old daughter decided she was going to teach my 8-year-old son how to call the police if you need them. She thought it was an important time for him to learn, since they wanted to tell on me for only playing 14 rounds of London Bridges with them. She said, "I called 911, Mom." I said, "I really hope you didn't, because the police will really come and we don't have an emergency." The phone rang and it was the police. My daughter, to say the least, was shocked. I told her she wasn't in trouble, but we can't do that again. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. "Officer Holman is here." I yelled for my kids to come downstairs, but they wouldn't come down. They immediately panicked, were in shock, and locked themselves in my daughter's room. My son was the first to come down. He was initially scared and apprehensive. From the second that Officer Holman spoke to him, he was calm, smiling, and happy. He has autism, an intellectual disability, along with some other diagnoses. Meeting someone new that wasn't planned, and when he thought he was in trouble, could have been very rough for him. Instead, he and Officer Holman talked about school, sports, policemen, jeeps, when and when not to call 911, and how awesome police badges are. He hugged Officer Holman at least 3 times. He told our entire family that he's He's inviting the entire police station to his Cops and Robbers themed birthday party, which, by the way, he did, and it's this Friday night. He wore a badge sticker proudly to school today as well. He wants to grow up to be just like Officer Holman. I wish that people in general were as conscientious as Officer Holman when dealing with kids, people with mental illnesses and special needs. One kind person can change someone's entire day. This encounter was the perfect reminder as we wrap up Autism Awareness Month that if we want to, we can make a difference. And then to wrap up on a more solemn note, in the last year and a half, the West Goshen Police Department has implemented Narcan, the opioid reversal drug, 23 times. 21 of those were successful, 22 were not. The laws on the books do not allow us to prosecute anyone regarding that, but I want you to know that the resources that we spend on that is rather substantial, because a call like that does not just take one officer, it takes 2 or 3, depending on the circumstances. And more than half of our patrol division and some of our traffic safety unit has dealt with that firsthand as a first responder, and as our criminal investigations division with regard to the criminal investigations that follow up. So I want you to understand that this is a crisis. We all know it's a crisis. And the average age of our victims is 30 and 3/4 years old. So it's not the street corner people that we think it is. It's the sons and the daughters and the residents in a nice community, even in West Goshen. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chief. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of police members here. A round of applause.
Amy is here, but she chose not to speak. Our victim from the crash is here, but she has opted not to speak, but she was here in support of our presentation. So thank you for coming.
Okay, folks, the next item on the agenda is a supervisor's hearing, number 2-2018, the conditional use hearing for 956 Matlack Street. Commerce Pursuit Capital LP.
Mr. Chairman, may I have a motion to open the hearing, please?
Thank you very much.
Certainly.
We have a motion to open the hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Okay, our hearing is open. Before we invite the applicant to begin its testimony, I would like to mark some board exhibits for this conditional use hearing. We will mark as Board Exhibit 1 the cover letter dated June 25th, 2018 that attaches the application and include the application in Board Exhibit 1. Board Exhibit 2 will be the copy of the proof of publication of notice of tonight's hearing, and that was advertised in the Daily Local News on July 3rd and July 10th for tonight's July 17th hearing. And finally, Board Exhibit 3 will be an affidavit of posting issued and signed by our zoning officer, Mr. Webb, noting that he posted a copy of the notice that appeared in the newspaper, and that is attached to his affidavit, on the property, and there are photographs depicting the posting on the property. And also as part of that exhibit are the names and addresses of the owners of property that received notice of this conditional use hearing. So that will be Exhibit B for Board 3. And those are the board exhibits this evening. At this time, I think it would be appropriate to ask the applicant's attorney, Mr. Jaros, to begin his case, and I believe he has some opening remarks. So, Mr. Jaros.
Thank you, Mr. Sander. John Jaros, on behalf of the applicant, Commerce Pursuit Capital LP, an entity of the Western Development Company. We're here this evening with respect to the subject property, which is a 4-acre parcel located at the northeast corner of South Matlack Street and Willowbrook Lane in the township. The property is currently occupied by the Westchester Agway Hardware and Garden Center. That center currently occupies approximately 60% of the property area with a retail sales building, associated outdoor sales area, material holdings area, and customer parking. The applicant proposes the construction of an approximate 62,000 square foot, 4-story lifestyle apartment building, which is a defined term under your zoning ordinance, consisting of 205 residential units, of which 187 units will be a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, and 1-bedroom den units, and 18 units will be 2-bedroom units. A total of 271 parking spaces will be provided. 111 of those spaces will be surface parking and 160 spaces will be below structure parking. The property was recently rezoned this year from I-2 to I-2R, and at the same time a text amendment was approved providing for a defined term lifestyle apartment in the zoning ordinance permitted by conditional use. The project proposes public sanitary sewer service to be provided by West Goshen Township Sewer Authority. The project proposes public water to be provided by Aqua Pennsylvania. The lifestyle apartment building will be less than 60 feet in height. In addition to an interior courtyard area in the center of the building, the project proposes a dog pen area, as well as a pool and pool deck amenity area. The applicant proposes roadway improvements to South Matlack Street in or about the proposed site of the property, consisting of those improvements depicted on preliminary road improvements plan or exhibit A12. And speaking of those exhibits, we have marked previously before tonight's hearing applicants exhibits A1 through A12 and provided them to the supervisors. A11 is a traffic impact study, of which the full copy of that traffic impact study has been provided to Mr. Sander. All other persons have been given the executive summary form of that traffic impact study. Just for the record, I'd like to read into these exhibits very quickly. A1 is a redacted copy of agreement of sale, first and last pages, dated February 3rd, 2017, between Corey Mattia, the seller, and Commerce Pursuit Capital, LP, the buyer. A2, a PowerPoint presentation entitled Luxor Lifestyle Apartments, presented to West Goshen Township, consisting of 22 slides prepared by Western Development Company, dated July 17th, 2018. A3 is a curriculum vitae of Steve Sauceline, our civil engineer from E.B. Walsh & Associates. A4 consists of 3 exhibits. A4A, Luxor Apartments Conditional Use Plans for Commerce Pursuit Capital LP, prepared by E.B. Walsh & Associates, Inc., dated June 25th, 2018, last revised July 9, 2018. A4B, Conditional Use Matlack Street Improvement Plan. A4C, Conditional Use Drainage Area Plan. A5, Conditional Use Stormwater Report prepared by E.B. Walsh & Associates, dated June 25th, 2018. A6 is a project narrative for the application. A7 is a public water service availability letter from Aqua Pennsylvania, dated July 3rd, 2018. A8, public sewer service availability letter from West Goshen Township, dated July 11, 2018. A9, a comparative water usage chart, Luxor Norristown versus Luxor West Goshen. A10, a curriculum vitae of Greg Richardson of Traffic Planning and Design, our traffic engineer. A11, the traffic impact study prepared by Traffic Planning and Design, Inc., dated July 17, 2018. And lastly, A12, preliminary road improvements plan prepared by Traffic Planning and Design, Inc., dated August 16, 2017. We have 3 witnesses this evening, Mr. John Westrom, Steve Sauceline, and Greg Richardson. And if the board or any members of the public have no questions, I call Mr. Westrom.
Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. John, your name and business address for the
John A. Westrom, Chairman, Chief Executive Officer of Western Development Company, located at 1300 Virginia Drive, Suite 215, Fort Washington, Pennsylvania, 19034.
And can you tell the board about Western Development Company and projects that you may have developed in the township to date?
In the past 10 years now, we developed the arbors at West Goshen, 133 townhouse units, all active adult, senior housing on the corner of Ward Avenue and what's the road that goes around? Yes. And the second project is on Ward Avenue also, which is 149 unit Arbor Square independent memory care and personal care community that was recently built and is being occupied now.
Can you tell the board about Western Development Company's efforts to develop this property as a lifestyle apartment building?
Yes, the property in question on Matlack, we were here probably close to 10 times between Planning Commission and board showing our concepts of our luxury lifestyle apartments. And we made various presentations on traffic studies as well as showing the target market of the millennial population.
As a result of those efforts, did the township pass a map amendment and zoning text amendment in the spring, early summer of this year?
Yes, they did.
And in so doing, was the property rezoned from I2 to I2R, as well as providing for a new use, a defined term, lifestyle apartment in the I2R district with associated area and bulk requirements?
Yes, it was.
After that map amendment and text amendment were approved, did Western Development Company file an conditional use application bringing us before the board this evening?
Yes.
And was that application made in the name of Commerce Pursuit Capital LP?
Yes, it was.
Is that entity you formed to take title to the property should the conditional use be approved?
We will ultimately take title to the property under a single purpose entity name, not yet formed, but as a subsidiary of Western Development Company in the same way that Commerce Pursuit Capital LP is designed also.
Is what has been marked as applicant's exhibit A1 a copy of the first and last page of agreement of sale with the current legal owner, 956 Matlack LLC?
Yes.
Was the application reviewed by the Township Planning Commission, and if so, what was the result?
Yes, it was. Mr. Tallman here presented last week in front of the Planning Commission, and I believe there was a unanimous recommendation for approval.
Now, we have provided Mr. Craig with a copy of all our exhibits this evening, one of those being A2, a PowerPoint presentation. If you prefer to use any particular slide, or just to explain to the board how the lifestyle apartment building will lay out and function on the site.
What would the board prefer? I think you've seen the presentation numerous times. So for those in the general public, luxury lifestyle apartments is a highly amenitized, very sophisticatedly, technologically advanced, and socially integrated property and product designed primarily for the millennial population. It is primarily one studio and one bedroom units. We have a property that we have built in Norristown area, and it's almost fully occupied right now, and it meets that particular target market. We find that the amenities that we have that are rich, whether it is the internet lounge, to the yoga studio, to the fitness center, to the game area, to the business center, to the sway lounge, to the center courtyard, to the infinity pool, to the dog washing station, the dog washing park, and other spaces within that I may have forgotten, totally hits the needs and wants of the target market millennial population.
And lastly, John, Mr. Sauceline will be describing the site plan in more detail in a moment, will he not?
Yes.
And Mr. Richardson, our traffic engineer, will be giving more detailed testimony with regard to road improvements proposed for the project.
Yes, he will.
Was there anything in closing you wanted to state to the board before we call those next two witnesses?
I just want to thank the board for the opportunity to present this and to create a great community in the township.
Thank you. Any questions?
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Western?
Any questions?
Okay.
Just for clarification, if you could tell the audience that this is not student housing. There's some folks out there that have this perception that this is because it's near the university. It's student.
This is not student housing. This is housing for people after they've graduated, and much more in terms of working professionals. I can tell you that the average occupants of our properties are 1.2 units. We create, at least in the Norristown site, we've created, I think, 8 school children in 150 plus units on average. And the average income of the people that live in our community are $72,000.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience?
I have a question.
Well, hold on. That's,
We'll proceed with hearing.
yeah, we have to proceed. It's a more formal hearing than just public comment, so that's okay. We have to proceed with the hearing, and we'll have time for public comment at the conclusion of the hearing.
And we certainly will make the witnesses available for any questions at the end of the hearing.
Correct.
So choose. Our next witness would be Mr. Steve Sossaline.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I did. Steve, your name and your business address.
Stephen J. Sauceline. I work for Edward B. Walsh and Associates. We reside at 125 Dallin Forge Road, Exton, Pennsylvania, 19341.
And you are the civil engineer on the project, are you not?
I am.
And we have marked as a previously marked Exhibit A3, a copy of your CV, correct?
That's correct.
You are a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, correct?
That's correct.
And you are familiar with the subject property in the applicant's development proposal.
I am.
And you are familiar with the regulations of the West Goshen Township zoning ordinance as it relates to this proposed development and the conditional use for lifestyle apartment, correct?
I am.
I would offer Mr. Sauceline as an expert civil engineer on this project, and he has been accepted by this township as such in the past.
Any questions based on Mr. Sauceline's qualifications? Okay. Seeing none, he will be accepted as an expert in civil engineering.
Thank you. Steve, what was your role in this particular application?
I was engaged by the applicant to provide civil engineering services in the development of the conditional use plan set.
And were you responsible for the preparation of applicants' exhibits A4, the conditional use site plan, the Matlack Street improvement plan, and the conditional use drainage area plan?
I was.
Perhaps if we could, Mr. Craig, put exhibit A4, very good, thank you. A4A is a copy of the conditional use site plan.
That's correct.
And that is on the screen presently before us, correct?
Correct.
What is the present zoning classification of the property?
It is the I2R zoning district.
And what is the present use of the property?
It exists as an agway, retail, and garden center.
And what are the gross and net areas of the site?
It's 4.0 acres gross, ultimately proposed. The net will be 3.96 acres.
Can you describe existing features of the site, the Agway Retail Center as it's laid out?
Certainly. The agway resides on approximately 60% of the 4-acre site. It consists of retail space, both interior and exterior, with vehicular parking.
And was the property rezoned this year to I2R, along with the text amendment in that district, to provide for lifestyle apartment use, a defined term under the zoning ordinance?
It was.
Using the plans that we have previously marked as applicants exhibit A4, can you please describe the lifestyle apartment building proposed for the site?
Sure. The lifestyle apartment, if I can just remember, is proposed. Let me see, I'm sorry, my clicker's not working. It's proposed in the center to rear of the overall 4.0 acre site. It consists of approximately 62,062 square feet of footprint area, and it consists of 205 total units.
Will the site be served by public water?
It will.
And will the site be served by public sewer?
It will.
Have these, both these public utilities, have they given us letters of serviceability marked as applicants exhibit A6 and A7 in the packet.
Yes.
Could you please review the area and bulk requirements that this proposed use is subject to?
Certainly. There is a table that we've provided on the plans that stipulates the zoning criteria as established for the I2R district. Overall, it's as I said, a 3.96 net acre area that's resultant from additional right-of-way being granted along the frontage of Matlack Street. We are in excess of the 3.0 acre minimum requirement. In terms of maximum lot coverage, which relates to the building, we are at 36%, which is less than the 40% maximum permissible. In terms of paved area, we are at 31.3%, which is less than 35% maximum. Overall green space that's provided is approximately 32.7%, which is greater than the 30% minimum requirement. In terms of setbacks, there's a single side yard setback as a result of it being a corner lot. We are in excess of the minimum requirement for side yard of 25 feet. We're 56.9. There's a front yard requirement, or excuse me, a building setback requirement that relates to the overall property delineage, which we are at 64.5, which is in excess of the 50-foot minimum requirement. The remaining two criteria in zoning relates to building height. Currently, the overall building is approximately 50 feet when you include necessary screening for mechanical equipment, and then factoring in the grading change that's resultant from understructure parking. We're about 53 feet, which is less than the 60-foot maximum requirement. And then finally, it's the side yard. I think I had stated, the setback from parking to property lines, the 10-foot minimum requirement. We're at 13.7.
And Steve, it's true, is it not, that all those parking requirements, along with what the applicant is providing, are listed on Exhibit A4A in more detail, are they not?
That's correct.
Can you describe the parking proposed for the facility and whether we are complying with the applicable parking regulations?
Certainly. There's two forms of parking that we provide. One is by surface parking that's in the front area of the project, which supports approximately 111 spaces. And then there are 160 below structure spaces that'll be accessed by the side area of the building.
Can you describe the type of stormwater management system proposed for the development of this site and where those systems will be located?
Certainly. There are two forms of stormwater management that we address. One is rate of runoff, or commonly known as attenuation. That is handled by an existing stormwater management basin located in the Willowbrook Business Park, specifically across Willowbrook Lane in the rear of parcels 25 and 25.8. Through a minor modification of the existing outlet control structure, we're able to accommodate the increase in overall impervious that's proposed in the project. In relationship to the overall drainage area that basin receives, our site's relatively minor in nature. The second component relates to water quality and quantity. That's going to be addressed, what's commonly known as best management practices, or BMPs. Those BMP areas are going to be wholly contained on the site, situated throughout the site, both underneath the front parking area as well as the grass areas to the rear and side of the building.
And to be clear, if this conditional use application were approved by the township, the process does not end here, is that correct?
That's correct.
We would go on to a land development plan application, which is a fully engineered application to the township, which the township consultants have to review in some depth.
That's correct.
Did you perform preliminary stormwater management calculations that was marked as applicant's exhibit A5 in our packet that supported conclusions you may have made with regard to the stormwater management system? And if so, what did they reveal?
I did. I prepared the report. As I said, we analyzed the existing basin as well as proposed BMPs to the site, again with minor modification to that existing outlet structure, which actually is in disrepair today. we're able to attenuate all the design storms 1 through the 100-year storm, to meet the township requirements. Those reductions occur in the percentage range of 25 to 40%. That's how we essentially accommodate stormwater runoff.
Are there any natural feature limiting zones on the property?
None that we know of, but we do have to perform on-site soil testing to confirm the means and methods of best management practices, and that'll be done under the land development phase.
Did you review emergency vehicle circulation on the site?
I did.
And what did you conclude?
We're able to access through the front parking area. As you can see, there's a main entrance off of Matlack Street. The site in and of itself is situated well for emergency access in that it also has frontage of Willowbrook Lane. And actually the parking area to the facility to the south provides for a drive area to essentially circumnavigate the perimeter of the building to provide access to all 4 sides.
Will the building be sprinklered in accordance with the applicable building code?
To my knowledge, it will.
And Steve, you are familiar with the conditional use standards contained in section 8475 of the Township Zoning Ordinance as applicable to this project, are you not?
I am.
And as such, after testifying as you have in this hearing this evening to the facts related to this application, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the applicant and the application are in compliance with the applicable specific standards of that zoning ordinance section?
I do.
What is that?
I feel that we meet all those conditions as outlined. There's various paragraphs within that section with our filing of the application of the conditional use site plan, the Matlack Street improvement plan, the stormwater management report, as well as certifications on both water and public sewer supply. I believe we addressed those conditions.
No further questions, Mr. Salson?
Questions from the board for Mr. Southline? Okay. No questions. Next witness.
Thank you. Our last witness is Mr. Greg Richardson.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Greg, your full name and business address.
My full name is Robert G. Richardson. I typically go by my middle initial, Greg. My business address is 1025 Andrew Drive, Westchester, PA.
And are you employed, and if so, by whom?
I'm employed by Traffic Planning and Design, which I've been with since day one in 1989. I'm a project manager with the firm, executive vice president, and a principal.
And did you testify and have you been accepted as an expert traffic engineer in similar applications before this board of supervisors in the past?
I have, yes.
And have we marked as a copy of your CV applicant's exhibit A6 in our packet? It was A10. I'm sorry. A10.
Yes, that is my curriculum vitae, A10.
Thank you. I would offer Mr. Richardson as an expert traffic.
Any questions from the board on Mr. Richardson's qualifications? Seeing none, he will be accepted as an expert traffic engineer.
Thank you. Greg, could you explain your role in this particular application?
Yes, Traffic Planning and Design was retained to provide traffic consulting services for the application that you have before you tonight. Specifically, our role was to perform a transportation impact study and then, based on that study, determine if there are any improvements, make those recommendations. And in this case, as you will see on Exhibit A12, we have prepared a concept plan of proposed improvements to South Matlack Street that was referred to earlier.
Now, did you or your office prepare a traffic impact study in relation to this application?
We did.
And has that been marked in our packet of exhibits as applicant's exhibit A11?
It has, yes.
Could you give the board your executive summary of what was done in that traffic impact assessment and what your conclusions and recommendations were?
Yes. The report itself is dated July 17th, 2018. The study itself, the scope of the work was to initially to determine intersections that were adjacent to the or in the near vicinity of the project site determine existing traffic conditions at those intersections, and specifically at Westchester, at Route 202 and Matlack Street, Willowbrook Lane and Matlack Street, as well as the existing agway driveways that serve the existing business that is still in operation. The next step is to determine if there are any known developments in the area, to project the traffic volumes for those known developments, as well as to project volumes out for what we would call a horizon year. In this case, we would typically do 5 years upon approval as a horizon year, and then we analyze those conditions as well as the existing conditions. The final step would be to determine the trips, what we call traffic associated with the site, how they would enter and exit the site, how you would distribute them through the subject intersections. And from that, we are able to provide an assessment of pre versus post construction of the development, and determine what impact from a transportation perspective that a particular land use such as these market rate apartments would have on the local roadway network. And then based on that analysis and the comparison, one would determine if there is impacts, then we'll determine what mitigation measures would be required to not only mitigate your impact, but also satisfy requirements that are in the township code, and in this case, the conditional use requirements.
What then were your conclusions with respect to impacts from this proposed development, and what, if any, recommendations for road improvements did you make in response thereto?
The conclusions that we reached, just like any other development that's going to generate traffic, it's just a matter of how you mitigate that impact from that traffic. Based on the analyses that we have conducted of the pre versus post construction of the apartments, and with the implementation of the improvements that we have recommended, I have A12 if we wanted to hand that out, which is actually on the screen here. I have I have larger versions of it for the board if they would like to see that. Steve, would you?
This is a larger version of Exhibit A12.
Correct, Mr. Sanders.
Yes, and we have that marked also A12, just so.
Oh.
So basis of the concept plan that we're handing out now is the proposed roadway improvements that we have contemplated that the applicant would install at his expense to mitigate his impact. What we show here on this plan on A12 is you can see the widened area. It's in yellow, a yellowish area, and you can see the legend up top. I have actually, thank you. Right. The legend, it says there's a yellow block with roadway widening, and then along the frontage, I guess I'll call it the southern side of South Matlack Street. It could be the western side, depending on your direction. The yellowish area would be an area of potential widening that would be necessary to restripe the roadway network, the pavement markings, for achieving a continuous left turn lane area from Westchester Bypass, Route 202, to the extent of just past the limits of the proposed property. The proposed, what we have shown on this concept is, I believe I don't know if it's in the PowerPoint presentation, but which would show up a little bit better, but what shows up on this particular plan is that we have the ability with the widening, is to extend the existing left turn lane from a stacking area of what would provide an area for stacking for 13 vehicles up to 19 vehicles. And then with that, we are able to provide a separate left turn lane into Willowbrook Drive on South Matlack Street, where no left turn lane is out there today. It does not exist today. Also, we have the ability to provide a separate left turn lane into our single point of access on South Matlack. So what we have essentially been able to provide is safe havens for left turn lanes for 2 intersections that don't exist today. We are able to extend the existing queuing along Matlack, which will improve the safety and efficiency of the overall intersection, as well as we have, which doesn't show up on this plan, we are also proposing to upgrade the traffic signals at that intersection to provide a 5-section signal head with a arrow where it does not exist today. The benefit of that is to be able to make the intersection operate more efficiently, give the green time at the intersection to the appropriate approaches, and depending on time of day and demand, where that is not a possibility today.
Greg, is it fair to say that we've got 3 slides within the PowerPoint presentation in the board's packet, and if they were to turn to the first one, which is labeled proposed plan for 956 South Matlack Street, it looks like this, would that be a visual depiction of what you just described?
That is exactly a depiction. It will show the existing 3-section head and what is proposed, which is a 5-section head, which would have the ability to provide the arrow. And again, the key here to remember is it not only makes it more efficient, the intersection more efficient, but it also makes it safer because you don't have left turns interacting. You give each approach the ability to turn unimpeded at certain times during the day, which will greatly improve the safety of this intersection.
And would the next slide also give a little bit more detail with respect to the improvements you described?
Yes, the next slide it's labeled proposed traffic improvement number 2. We have graphically shown on this slide, you can see the graphic in the second, on the right-handed photograph of a stat, which is basically 19 versus 13. That is, again, as I referred to previously, is an improvement over the existing stacking that occurs on the roadway today, that you have the ability to stack only 13 cars. In the future, you'll have 19 cars. And really, if you're just talking about numbers, that doesn't sound like a lot, but what it does is it improves the flow of traffic because you get left turns vehicles. If you don't have enough room to stack in those left turn lanes, they spill out into the through lane, therefore creating an area that is congested. By being able to provide a longer area, you're able to more or less, if you want to say in lack of better terms, is process more vehicles through the intersection, making it more efficient and making it safer. Safety is a key issue here, is improving the safety along this corridor.
And Greg, I think there's a third slide that's labeled proposed traffic improvements number 3 after that one.
Yes, this is the area. You see 2 photographs here also. The left-handed photograph is the existing conditions. You can see where the red arrow is pointing to. That's what we would call a transverse pavement markings, or a waste area that legally you're not able to park in that area. What we have proposed with the improvements and with the proposed widening is we can actually stripe out a left turn lane in that area to provide safe and efficient access to vehicles that want to turn onto Willowbrook Lane, as well as continuing on, again, in the second arrow, the right-hand arrow in the right-hand photograph, is to provide a center turn lane to provide a left turn lane into the proposed apartment complex. There is no left turn lane out there for the existing agway driveways. And that's another point that should be brought out, is that we are actually reducing the number of access points out onto West Matlack Street from 2 to 1. And we believe that, again, if you're reducing conflict points, only improves your safety.
You said West Matlack, I think you meant South Matlack.
South Matlack.
Right. Okay. And the next slide, I think, is the plan that you previously made reference to earlier in your testimony, correct?
Yes, this is the same as A12, the larger 11 by 17 that we handed out to the board.
We have depicted these road improvements to South Matlack Street in somewhat of a initial design, but you heard me say earlier, would you agree with me that this application proceeds through a land development plan? It will have to be fully engineered in a lot more detail and reviewed by the township in that process. Right?
Yes, this is a concept plan. We would have to determine the actual width, the depth of pavement, and it would go through a full, South Matlack is a township road, and just like any other land development, it still would have to go through your review from your consultants, your engineering consultants, as well as changes to the traffic signal. You own the traffic signal, I think, if you do. And so therefore, that would be another level of review that the township would have the ability to look at the existing equipment there. We've talked about arrows and things there, but it has to go through the township first, and then it would be submitted to the PennDOT because they have ultimate jurisdiction. PennDOT would not review the roadway improvements, again, because South Matlack is a township road, but where the improvements change and affect the signal plan, they certainly would have some jurisdiction.
And Greg, earlier I asked you to give a Reader's Digest version of your traffic impact study, but you'd agree with me, would you not, that your findings and conclusions are in a lot more detail within that full traffic impact study in possession of Mr. Sanders? Right?
Yes, I just went through the executive summary to give you the, I would call it Cliff Notes version of it, but the bottom line conclusions are that we are mitigating our impact. In fact, the levels of service and the delays at the intersection will be lower than existing conditions, even with the site itself. That is a level of requirement under your conditional use that we produce levels of service that are no worse than existing, as well as provide safe and efficient access to the public road, which we believe we are improving the efficiency and safety along South Matlack as well as at the signalized intersection.
In conclusion then, do you have an opinion within a reasonable degree of traffic engineering certainty as to whether the construction of the proposed development would adversely impact the health, safety, and general welfare of the community from a traffic engineering perspective? And so what is that opinion?
I do have an opinion, and it is, again, with the proposed improvements that we have presented here to the board, that, and with the development as was presented to you by the previous witnesses, from a traffic perspective, we do not believe that it will have an adverse impact from a traffic standpoint.
And did you have an opportunity to review the conditional use specific standards contained in section 8475 of the Township Zoning Ordinance? And if so, after reviewing those standards as it applies to your findings and conclusions, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the applicant and the application are in compliance with the applicable specific standards of that ordinance section?
My opinion is that we do comply with the particular sections that pertain to traffic. The other witnesses can attest to the other sections, but as it relates to traffic and transportation standpoint and perspective, we do comply.
Those are all the questions I have for Mr. Richardson.
Any questions from the board for Mr. Richardson?
I have a question.
Sure.
Yes.
In the diagram, you're showing the Willowbrook Lane crossing South Matlack, and you have additional stacking of cars behind before they would cross over Willowbrook. Is that, am I reading this correctly? I'm looking at 14, proposed traffic improvement number 2. I'm just curious about whether or not that intersection will require any signage or signaling.
It will not require signaling. It doesn't have enough volume to satisfy the signals. And also, with it being existing congestion, it would not, you wouldn't receive approval from PennDOT with it being so close. First of all, it doesn't meet the warrants. You have to have a certain level of traffic. The signage, as far as signage there, we haven't discussed. So certainly Willowbrook is not under our purview. We don't have the right to necessarily sign it for any turning movement restrictions or anything like that. I do note that the intersection itself, the existing conditions have a sign out there that says do not block intersection. So whether we maintain that, I would probably recommend we maintain that. And there's also a new, I don't call it technology these days, but there's a thing where you can paint the intersection in a box. It's a cross, and it says, and then you have an associated with sign that says "Do not block box," which again will only improve safety.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Just a quick question. I know you touched on it briefly, Mr. Richardson, but is there any way you could bring up proposed traffic improvement number 1? that intersection myself over a number of years. If you could speak to that, I know you spoke to it briefly, but just to enunciate what the proposed traffic improvement is.
Okay, certainly, yeah, I think when I was explaining it, I don't think the graphic was up, so, but what we are proposing is, this is more or less, this is not the existing signal head, but it's very similar to what's out in the field. It's a single red ball, an amber, and a green, with no arrows, just solid, amber indications, and green and red indications. What is out there today, so what that does is the operation today is that when each approach gets the green, they both basically proceed at the same time, and therefore they have to yield, a left-turning vehicle must yield to the through vehicles coming through the intersection, and vice versa on both approaches. What the proposal that we have are put forth is to change that section, three-section head, signal head, to a 5-section signal head. And what it would have the ability to do is you would get a green arrow in a particular approach that would have that demand depending on the time of day. You set up the signal equipment to in phasing depending on time of day. And what that would do is it give the approach, whichever approach is, needed the advanced signal, is that would give that approach the advance, be able to safely proceed. The left turns can clear out a lot faster on either approach, whichever one gets that call. The other vehicles would be stopped, but they would clear out and it would make the intersection be more efficient. What showed up on the previous, one of our previous slides is that by installing this improvement, we are able to, and it's actually, we didn't put it up, but it's in the slides, is that we're able to improve the safety or the efficiency through that intersection by I'll say just roughly 25%. That 25% increase or decrease in delays at the intersection is a tremendous improvement, makes it more safe for vehicles, and they can feel safe making a left turn with an arrow as opposed to having to wait to, can I make it around this left turning vehicle that's opposing me? So it's we believe, and actually it's technically warranted today. And again, the applicant is putting forth the infrastructure to install that on behalf of the township to not only solve an existing deficiency, but mitigate his impact.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Sure.
Any other board questions for Mr. Richardson? Any other board questions for any of the witnesses that may have occurred to the board and they'd like the opportunity to ask? Okay. Mr. Jarvis?
That essentially concludes the applicant's case in support of this application. I would move the evidence applicants exhibits A1 through A12.
They will be accepted. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I think it's appropriate to call for public comment.
Public comment, please. Dr. White.
Now, yeah, I think you should. It's a conditional use.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Good evening, Doug White, West Goshen Township in Caswell. There were 2 changes in the plan. Is the board aware of those changes? I understand this is just conditional use and not a land development. We're not deciding on land development. The 2 changes in the plan were increase of units from 189 to 205, but a shift from 2 bedrooms to 1 bedroom. And was there supposed to be a right-hand turning lane from South Matlack into the property, and it was deemed not necessary, and they just wanted to widen the shoulder?
Is there a witness that can answer the question?
I would ask Mr. Tallman.
Mr. Tallman.
This morning. If you'd like to respond.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
May I begin, please?
John Tallman, T-A-L-L-M-A-N.
John, your position with Western Development Company,
I'm Vice President of Acquisitions of
and you have been involved in this application from its inception.
I have.
Even prior to the rezoning and the text.
That's correct.
And you have specific knowledge with respect to the application and the details related there.
I do.
Can you answer Dr. White's question?
Yes, Dr. White was in attendance last week when we presented our PowerPoint, and we went through the full PowerPoint. At the end of the PowerPoint, there are 2 slides that were just to enlighten everyone what changes were made. We're going to ask to remove the decel lane that goes into the development. And we're going to do that just because it isn't necessary, because we're widening the road. We already have enough room for deceleration. And you're right, the other change was, originally we had 189 units, we're now 205. And that was done mostly by taking 2-bedroom units, of which we dropped from 36 to 18, and making them studios or 1-bedrooms. So no change in the size of the building, no change really in the number of people we expect to live there, just a couple extra demise points. And that's because market factors told us that the 2 bedrooms are not leasing as well as the 1-bedrooms and studios.
Okay. In the land development process, would they be open to possibly keeping the decel lane?
I think if that was brought up, that is something we can certainly talk about. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we have full land development to go, so the road is not engineered.
Okay. Also, as with any redevelopment, there's a lot of concern with residents of traffic, looking at something new that's not agway, how's this going to impact the community? May I just make a suggestion on the actual building type? Is that okay?
This is public comment. You can certainly
so-
state your comment as to
okay.
what Dr. White did.
All right. I understand Mr. Westrom has a building he'd like to see. An idea would be, instead of a square building, would possibly be a U-shaped structure facing the north or facing Matlack Street. I understand it would result in fewer units. However, it would be less impervious surface. It might be more aesthetically pleasing. There might be more opportunity for green space, open space, and in exchange for agreeing to something like that, maybe a possible height variance to make the structure a little higher to make up for the fewer units. Just an idea.
It's an interesting idea. Thank you for presenting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Dr. White. Any additional public comment?
Any other public comments, folks?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am. ADDAS, last name RAHEARI. I have a question. Anyone can answer this from the experts. What vehicle, what mechanism do you have in your possession to restrict any applicant that they're a student renting these units? Are these vehicles or these criteria, are they restricted by the township or by you only? And if so, do you have any legal basis to enforce those? Thank you.
Jordan? This is Township Manager Casey Lalonde.
Hi, Colin. We only allow student housing in the R4 zoning district. This is not the R4 zoning district, so student housing is not permitted in this district. Plainly put it.
Follow up, Mr. Ramari.
With all due respect, that did not answer the question. With respect to legal issue, what vehicle do you have in your possession, legal vehicle, to restrict? If my daughter or my son, they're a student, they want to apply, they have a legal right to live there. But if they're found out to be a student, what vehicle do you have in your possession legally? Either erect them or serve them notice. That is the question. Thank you.
And the answer would be the zoning ordinance itself, as a township ordinance, can be enforced by the zoning officer, and there are enforcement provisions and penalties for violation of the zoning ordinance. So that's how the enforcement would occur. Any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none. it would be appropriate to entertain them. Oh, I see Mr. Burnell.
I was going to make the motion to close.
And I was going to ask for one, so you beat me to it. Oh, just a moment, we may want to keep it open.
I did have a question for Ms. Lasota. Mr. Western?
Yes.
Mr. Tallman?
I withdraw the motion.
If you run into, let's say, issues with a tenant, behavior issues, partying, smashing beer bottles, what is your lease agreement like for your residents? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't have the actual code of conduct that we use for our leases, but our leases are very strict and provide that any behavior that is not, what's the right word, not conducive to the property and maintaining of the property or the health, welfare, and safety of individuals within the premises is duly noted and can be immediately, tenants can be immediately evicted. Just so everybody's aware, we have security cameras everywhere. I have them on my iPad right here. I could show you what's going on in the building right now. We never really watch people, but we certainly have had a very limited, but a couple of instances where we've had to address this type of behavior, and those residents are no longer residents of our community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Mr. Byrd?
I'll make the motion to close the hearing.
A motion to close the hearing. Is there a second?
Chris?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the hearing is closed. The board may certainly deliberate. Because it is sitting in a quasi-judicial manner, it can deliberate in private if it wishes. It can adjourn to next door and deliberate in private. Or if you're ready to make a motion, that's certainly an option.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. I propose that we vote on this issue. Mr.
In that case, I'll make the motion that we approve.
Great. I'll second that.
Can I make a suggestion? If the motion is to approve, that you approve it conditioned on the applicant obtaining all appropriate approvals required, including but not limited to land development improvement.
I'll amend my motion to include that. Thank you.
And I will also ask that after this vote, a brief recess for anyone that has to hear it. That's true. Excellent. Okay, so we have a motion on the table, a first and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Folks, we're going to take a brief 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Okay, folks, welcome back. We're looking at item number 7 on our agenda. That is the final subdivision plan for a lot line change for David and Cynthia Springer at 307 West Town Road. Mr. Kraft.
Supervisors, you each have a copy of the plan in front of you. It is projected on the screen as well. This is the existing Springer property here on West Town Road. This is Fremont Cemetery, and it's proposed to take this portion of ground here at the rear of the Springer property from the cemetery and combine it with the existing property here. There are no building additions planned, no changes to impervious surfaces, no changes to property all at this time. It's simply a lot line change to increase the square footage of the property. All the area and bulk requirements are met, and there's no problem with the remaining area for the cemetery. So there are no zoning issues with the proposed lot line change. Has been reviewed by the Planning Commission and been recommended for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Do you have any questions from board members?
I have a question. What is the purpose for the extension?
Well, I don't know precisely, but one issue that will be resolved is there's an existing encroachment in the parking area here, so this will resolve the existing encroachment, and Mr. Mullen, the engineer, and Mr. Springer, the property owner, can further address that question.
I'm John Mullen, with Mullen Engineering.
John, can you come up? Yeah, just get to the microphone. Thank you. You don't have to be sworn though, which is you're welcome.
Hi, I'm John Mullen with Mullen Engineering. It's David Springer, the property owner. He's buying a piece in the back. One, be conforming with what's existing right now. There's most likely we'd expand the parking at some point. He had an agreement with the cemetery, and he had a certain timeline in order to get things approved. So we wanted to meet that deadline.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Any public comment? Dr. White?
I would urge the board to approve. I think it's a good plan.
So, thank you, Dr. White. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Thank you, Mr. Brunel.
I'll second it.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, folks, are our reports for the month of June 2018. And our first report will be the police report presented by Chief. Please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, again. And for the month of June, the police department responded to 1,849 calls for service, responded to 64 alarms, one of which was valid, investigated 24 reportable motor vehicle accidents, and logged 23,897 miles on our patrol vehicles. In addition, other locations, selective enforcement was active on Grove Road, Pennsylvania Avenue, Rosary Lane, Westtown Road, South New Street, Montgomery Avenue, and Ellis Lane. Our career development continues. Officers attended a abusive head trauma class. An officer attended the Delaware Valley Intelligence Center, known as the DIVIC, down in Philadelphia. Our ERT continued their monthly training. Officer Boyle attended a field training officer program. Detective Taylor attended a one-week course on forensic interviewing of children. Officer Story attended a handgun, shotgun instructor course. Officer Cotter attended negotiator training for the ERT team, and Lieutenant Carroll attended a three-week program for Police Executive Research Forum in Boston. And back on the table to the rear is the Citizens Police Academy application. This is the second annual. It begins September 12th, and it will run for 9 weeks.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Question? I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Please,
I have a question for the chief. My wife asked me,
Sure.
in view of...
Strap.
I'm sorry, we gotta get you on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'll put the microphone, thanks.
In view of recent videos that have come out with lip sync, including the borough, which just came out with one that every day is a vacation, looking at the borough. Wanted to know if West Goshen was going to do the same thing. Whether you two gentlemen were going to be involved in it.
Well, I'm not sure who's going to be involved in it yet, but the captain and I did actually have a conversation this afternoon after I reviewed the Westchester one, and I have to give them credit. That was kudos. They did a good job on that.
They did?
So, we'll see. Okay, we'll keep you in suspense.
Okay.
We'll keep you in suspense. Thank you.
Okay, folks, the next item on the agenda is the Fire Marshal's report, including Goshen Fire Company and Good Fellowship Ambulance Company, presented by Fire Marshal Andrea Testa. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. For the month of June, there were a total of 25 inspections, 7 commercial use and occupancy, 2 fire blocking, 4 sprinkler, 4 framing, 4 walkthrough, 1 prom, and 3 fire alarm. There were 6 fire calls, 1 automatic fire alarm, 2 house fire, 1 car fire, 1 appliance fire, and 1 electrical fire. I attended 2 meetings, 1 fire call follow-up. I gave 1 fire safety presentation, locked up 1 Knox box. There were 2 burn complaints, and I attended 3 days of training. The Westchester Fire Department had 24 calls for the month, and Good Fellowship Ambulance had 135 calls. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Just a quick follow-up, and perhaps Derek, you could help me out with this. As far as the grant that we received for our fire personnel training with pipeline, how are we at that point? Where are we at this point, Travis?
Travel arrangements have been made, so everything's squared away with both the flights and hotels. One of the trips, the registration is squared away, so I'm just really working on the one trip and actually registering for the class. But it's not any issue, it's just a matter of nailing down the person to give me the invoice. So everything's going smoothly and we are proceeding accordingly.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Mr. Beswick's report, building officials report. Good evening, Mr. Beswick.
Good evening. For the month of June, there was 130 total permits. One single-family dwelling, 27 building, 23 electrical, 4 fire protection, 30 HVAC, 13 plumbing, 7 roofing, 7 zoning, 8 use and occupancies, 4 E&S, 1 sewer tapping, 1 open space, and 4 road occupancies. The estimated cost of construction was $6,505,944.90, and the permit fees were $44,477.54. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beswick. Next item on the agenda is number 9, Board of Supervisors announcements. Do we have any announcements starting? Ms. Soda?
Yes, Mr. I had an update on the Tree City board that we've been working on in conjunction with Tree City USA. I have received about 6 or 7 applications to sit on that board. I will be pulling all that together and giving that to management, township management, to circulate to the Board of Supervisors so that we can begin to move forward in forming the board. I believe an ordinance is required. Is that correct, Mr. Sanders, for the tree board in conjunction with Tree City USA?
Shade Tree Commission, is that what?
Yes.
Yeah, to establish that, yes, absolutely.
Yes. Do we had originally authorized Tree City USA? Do you need further authorization for working on the ordinance for the Shade Tree Commission?
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate if the board is of a mind to make a motion to authorize the solicitor to draft and advertise the appropriate ordinance to establish a shade tree commission.
Should we do that next month? Or would the board like to do that next month when I hand that, when you have the applications? Yes, Mr. Purnell would like that done next month. That's fine. I will pull everything together and then provide it to the manager to disseminate.
You want to do that through the organization side, include sponsors. Yeah, I think
And if a supervisor needs to sit on the board, would that be something that you might be interested in, Mr. Purnell?
Sure.
Great. Excellent.
Thank you.
I like
That's it.
shade tree.
For your work on that. Ms. Soda, Ms. Dunn.
Yes, I have an announcement. We have confirmed the date as August 29th at 6 p.m. for a joint workshop with the Board of Supervisors and the Sewer Authority Board. The purpose of our workshop is to inform the residents, township employees, and anyone else who's interested in knowing the status of the Sewer Authority's improvements and repairs and new capital improvements that have been installed and are becoming operational as all the pieces come together. The Board of Supervisors will be receiving a recommendation from the Sewer Authority about the rate increase, the quarterly increase that will allow us to be able to pay off the annual principal and interest component of the $17 million bond. And we felt that it was best if we could make this an open meeting specific to allowing the Sewer Authority to share all of their updates and the great work that they've been doing, and give residents an opportunity to ask questions about the increase, what the basis is for that, but more importantly, for them to have a better understanding of the investment that the township and the Sewer Authority have made in our sewer plant, and be able to ask questions about activities that have taken place already and have been completed, as well as any anticipated future investments that we need to make. So we want as many people as possible to attend, and we'll be doing some promotional information on the website to inform residents about the meeting on August 29th. In addition, I would like to recommend to the board that we have an independent party assist us in reviewing the analysis prepared for the rate study so that we can have, if necessary, someone that we can ask questions of regarding some of the assumptions that need to be taken or have been taken in the analysis so that we are better prepared once we receive their recommendation to be adequately informed in responding to it. And I believe I need to make a request in case we have to end up spending some money.
That's correct. A motion would be appropriate to...
Motion on the floor.
Well, to authorize, it would be authorize staff to engage or at least recommend the appropriate professional to review the rate study analysis.
So we have a motion from Ms. Duntebeck. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Mr. Meekum, any announcements? Mr. Purnell, any announcements? No. Okay, I have no announcements either, so we'll move on to number 10, Township Manager's announcements.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. I have several announcements. Just a reminder, we're doing our annual Neighborhood University program. It starts in September. You can go to our website for information. It's the Westchester Area Council of Governments. So it's all 7 municipalities get together. Rick, we're doing stormwater again. Yay. Sometime in October, I believe. We're actually holding the kickoff meeting here, September 6th, I believe, where we'll have a normal Council of Governments meeting and then kind of kick off the Neighborhood University program. So again, if you want to sign up, I think we could take up to 50 residents from all 7 municipalities. It's usually very well attended. Just a reminder also, we have our summer concerts going on right now and also 2 episodes of Shakespeare in the Park. Please check our website for those dates. Just an update on our, the board had requested 2 requests for proposals be completed. We have engineering RFPs due this Thursday, and thanks to Ms. Jean Denham for revising our banking RFP. Those will probably be put out there in about 2 weeks, maybe 3, depending on the final draft. We're going to give banks about 45 days due to the amount of information we're requesting, so those will be due in September. And I just wanted to give just a quick, we provide on behalf of the Finance Department, they produce a general fund financial update each month, which is given to the board. I just want to go over generally revenues and expenditures. Revenues are at, now we're about 6 months through the year, we're about 60% of revenues collected, which is very good. Real estate current, on a budget of $3.6 million, we've collected just over $2.4 million. Earned income tax is ahead of budget at 56%. The budget is $8.1 million with almost $4.6 million collected so far. On the expenditure side, again, we're about 50% through the year. Our expenditures are at about 47%, so we're slightly behind in expenditures, which is great. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lalonde. Number 11, any questions? Sorry. Number 11, Township Manager's announcements. Excuse me, Township Engineers, stormwater announcements.
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Number 12, Zoning Officers announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recently, Mr. Craig and I had a meeting with some residents with regards to some chicken issues. The chicken ordinance is, it's working. However, the enforcement side becomes difficult. So I will be speaking with Mr. Sanders to bring that ordinance completely back, to take it out of the zoning ordinance so that we can issue non-traffic citations instead of civil hearings.
What is the chicken ordinance? Just explain.
Yes, it's the,
I'm sorry, yes, that's
so it's the domestic feeding of the livestock. Depending on your zoning district, we allow so many chickens per square footage. For example, in the R3, you can have 4 chickens with 18,000 square feet or more, and then it escalates up to as many as 8 is the maximum you're allowed to have.
Are you allowed a rooster?
No roosters.
But
No,
Be crated or contained?
they must be contained. That's the problem that we have had with this one particular property. The chickens decide, well, they don't decide, they're let out, and chickens don't know boundaries, and they dig up the neighbor's mulch.
They're free range.
So we've been working with the residents, trying to come to a resolve. We're hoping, but we're not hopeful because it's been an ongoing issue. So that's why we're going to bring this ordinance back, keep the ordinance itself intact, just make it penalties different so we can write non-traffic citations versus having to go there.
Yeah,
So
we'll talk about that, because there may be a need to keep it in zoning as a recognized use of property, but also have a standalone ordinance about perhaps chickens running at large.
like the dogs.
Right, exactly, and that would be enforceable criminally.
Like the dogs, can we give that to the chief as well? Because they handle the pull of the animals.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. Absolutely.
No, I have nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Widow.
They make chicken handcuffs, like very small, very tiny.
Number 13, approval of the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes of June 19, 2018.
I make a motion for approval. If there's anyone, any edits or changes?
Oh, you have some changes.
No, I said unless there are edits or changes.
Are there any changes recommended by any Board of Supervisor members? Okay. Any changes from the audience? Any requests? Board of minutes, the minutes? Do you have a question? Come on up, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the board, although you meet the statutory definition or legal definition of your minutes, but intent and spirit of that minute was not observed. I think a little bit of elaboration as far as whatever someone comes and makes a comment, it should be a little bit more in detail. So down the road, if there's an absence of video recording or audio recording of it, someone can review that minute and say, what was that conversation was all about? And it should not be sanitized. And I use the word sanitized very forcefully. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments? Okay, do we have a motion to approve from Ms. Stonebeck? Do we have a second? I'll second. Okay, a second from Mr. Burnell. Okay, a second from Mr. Miko. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Number 14 is the approval of the treasurer's report dated June 30th, 2018 for the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund, and the bills to be paid from these funds. We have a motion to approve. We have a second from Mr. Miko. Any comment from the audience? Mr. Rabari, is it?
That's correct, sir. Mr. Chairman, if I make a suggestion, you're asking public to make a comment on something that they have not seen. Wouldn't it be appropriate to post that on front of the door so individuals come in at the last minute, they can look at it? Just a comment, just a suggestion. A lot of municipalities do that. I brought that up in the East Goshen Township. They were doing it for years. Just a suggestion. In the case somebody in the audience, last minute, they show up, it's taped right to the door, they can go review it. Since you're asking someone to comment on the content which they haven't seen, how they can comment on that. Thank you.
Refer to Mr. Luan.
Yeah, the treasurer's report is posted usually a week in advance on the website, so it's been out there.
So it is accessible, just for, so everybody's knowledge, it is accessible on the website.
well prior to the meeting.
Prior to the meeting. So we will take that suggestion under consideration, but just for everyone's knowledge, if you do have questions about it, ask them. It will be continually posted on the website for your review. Number 15, discussion and possible approval of ordinance number 5
No, there wasn't, I'm sorry, there's no vote.
Did we take a vote on that? I didn't think we did.
I think I had a motion and a second. Okay, so all those in favor? Aye. Aye. All right. Number 15, discussion and possible approval of ordinance number 5-2018, establishment of residential rental housing inspection program. Mr. Boyer, would you like to open up on it?
Sure. Directly after our meeting last month, I was able to do some research. I went and collected data from surrounding apartment complexes, which I did email to the board, to get the number of inspections we could look at on a monthly basis. And it seems like we would be somewhere roughly maybe around 100 inspections a month, based on the numbers that we were given from the apartment complexes. I think that if we pass this, I had if Derek doesn't mind, we had a brief discussion before the meeting, and I believe there's some discussion about implementing this at a later date. And that was one of the things that the apartment complexes had said, when would this be, if the board was to pass this in July, when could we expect to have this to be enforced? And I said, yeah, that's a good question, because we certainly would need time on our end to get prepared. We have to get forms together, the checklist forms that we're going to use, and we'll we need to educate the landlords that we have on file, attempt to find the ones that we don't have on file that are not currently registering their properties. So I think that if we pass this, that we implement, certainly down the road, toward the beginning of next year, especially when there's a fee associated with it. Because I don't think we want to prorate fees and try to figure that out. So it'd just be a mess. This would give us time to get our ducks in order and do some education to our constituency.
Do you think that it would be in order to implement it at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I think that would be perfect.
January 1st. Very reasonable. Give us time for education, give us time to get our logistical back office set up. Yeah, absolutely.
Couple comments. The board could enact the ordinance tonight. It's been advertised. It's motion to approve, and if you pass that, the ordinance has been enacted. You can change the effective date of the ordinance from 5 days from now till January 1st, 2019, and state that in the ordinance. I will comment that the fee resolution, the fee schedule for this particular ordinance is somewhat complicated. Casey and I were looking at our respective notes from the last meeting and had a difficult time quantifying exactly what the fees were. So currently there's no fee schedule resolution amendment ready to incorporate the fees. So on that basis, and because it sounds like the board is of a mind to have this go into effect on January 1st, I would ask the board to continue this matter until closer to the effective date. Perhaps bring up the November meeting and consider enactment then along with the fee schedule resolution. Or you could do it anytime between now and then, but I'd like to have the fee schedule resolution with it so that everybody, they're enacted and adopted at the same time.
You want the resolution for the fees and the ordinance at the same time?
I think that'd be a good idea.
Why?
Well, the ordinance requires the payment of fees, and yeah.
But as I understand the way this was written, the fees, in fact, are a separate table and are voted on as a separate function.
As a separate document, certainly. They're not in this ordinance, so it's a separate resolution, not an ordinance. It doesn't have to be advertised. And a resolution that will amend the township's fee schedule. to include a new section that says rental license fee and inspection fees, and list them as Bill laid out, as we discussed at our last meeting. Got a little convoluted, but that resolution should probably be prepared before the ordinance is enacted.
Okay.
Now, if we can work out the fee schedule and have it ready next month, we can do the ordinance and the resolution next month. You could probably do that under the same advertising, because the advertising is good for 60 days, and it was advertised on July 3rd. So you could certainly do that at your August meeting, and put the ordinance in effect on January 1st, so you don't have to wait until later in the year to do it.
Do we need, since the effective date is going to be January as opposed to in 5 days, do we need to re-advertise it because of that change?
If you guys decided to put it, initially I said no, it's sort of a clerical change, it's a minor change, and it's to nobody's detriment. We're not making it effective sooner, we're making it effective later. But if you decide that you want to put it off past August, I would say that we would re-advertise it and put the correct effective
But
date.
we could do it the way it sits now with the advertising that's there.
In August.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Murphy. Mr. Murphy, if you could come up, please.
Thank you. On page 2, at the top, you've got annual rental license required. It says on or before December 30th of each year. You make this effective January 1st, and what you're doing is you're giving them a whole year to apply for licenses. Because if it doesn't go into effect January 30th, you've got to wait till the following December 30th to put that into effect. Thank you.
That's a good one. In that light, if we're requiring folks to act before December 30th, it should be in effect as far ahead of time as possible, again, to allow for the education element. I would not suggest that we put this off until later in the year. I think it can be acted on in August along with the fee schedule resolution and made effective 5 days after its legal enactment, because you'll have the fee schedule with it. It won't be enforced until December, but it'll be in effect.
Right. You can write warning.
No, I don't think it's warnings. I think it's just the ability to notify everybody that, hey, this is here now, and you have to do this by a certain date, and here's what's required, and here's what it costs.
Education.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions? So do we need a motion to continue this to next month, or can we just state that we're...
I would make a motion to continue it so that we can carry forth the advertisement from 1 month to the next.
So a motion for continuance.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Dale.
I'll second.
Sal Chebec, all those in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and possible approval of Army Corps of Engineers contract for stormwater engineering services. I'm looking towards my engineer, but I don't know if I should go towards the township manager.
I can start. For the past maybe 3 years, we were, I will say, lucky enough to be able to foster a relationship with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for stormwater services. It's essentially a 50-50 split grant. We pay $50,000 a year, which is in the budget for 2018, for the Army Corps to do mapping and other services. Rick, you can expand on that. They sent a team of Army Corps employees out to West Goshen to do mapping of our stormwater system and other services, which we're hoping will lead to grant opportunities with the feds for stormwater work in the future. So we've tried really hard to foster this relationship, and this is an update of the current contract.
Okay. Mr. Craig, anything to add to that?
We've had mapping of our stormwater system for quite some time, so their primary function of the Army Corps, they're doing condition assessments of inlets and pipe conveyance systems using pole camera, which we actually have and supplied, but they're doing the labor to actually go out, open up the inlets, put the camera down there, take video of each of the pipelines, and then once that's completed, we'll evaluate those and prioritize necessary repairs and maintenance of the conveyance system in these months, based on that information.
Thank you, Mr. Craig.
I have a question. Are they going to be going through all of the pipeline, or is it just, is there already a list of priority areas for them to look?
It's going to be all of the pipelines in the township.
Any other questions from board members? Do we have any questions from the audience? With that said, I entertain a motion to approve this contract. I will make that. Mr. Purnell, Mr. Meekin, second. All those in favor? Aye. Next item on the agenda is discussion and possible approval of the sewer use agreement between West Goshen Township, West Whiteland Township, and the West Goshen Township Sewer Authority. Mr. Unruh, good evening.
As you're aware, there's been a major upgrade and improvement in the sewer plant over the past couple of years. And the municipal participants with whom there are agreements between the township and the authority have been entering into updated agreements. These agreements initially date back with East Goshen to the late 70s, and then with West Whiteland and Thornbury Township and West Town in the mid-80s. And they were updated in the mid-90s, and now we're into another update. The text of the agreements is very similar to the ones at the very beginning, but it's we wanted to make them more updated because of current circumstances. So we had an agreement with East Goshen. They were the first ones, and East Goshen's the most vigilant. They send people to the authority meetings and have for many, many years. Thornbury's on board, and West Whiteland is now signed up. It took a little while. They were, as you are aware here, they've been kind of preoccupied with the pipeline issues, and it took them a while. They have a whole new board, so it took them a little while before everybody wrapped their arms around this. But we do have an agreement, which is before you. It's been approved by West Whiteland and by the Sewer Authority. It's very similar. We tried to keep the agreements pretty much the same, and we're here this evening. Ted Murphy, who's the chairman, is here as well. We're here to ask for your approval of the document. And I have the signature pages, which have been signed by West Goshen Sewer Authority and by West Whiteland Township.
I actually have a question.
Sure.
I was attending one of the sewer authority meetings, and I believe Ms. Smith, during your sewer authority meeting, had suggested a modification to the agreements having to do with a definition.
Right.
I don't know if that is dealing with catalogs.
I think that the decision was that at some point in time we'll get around to addressing that, but we didn't want to change the agreements that we had. It's taken us about a year and a half to get to this point. And the provision that was discussed was a provision that had been in the agreements for about 30 years. So I think the consensus was we made 30 years and we ought to be able to. But it was a point well taken, and I think that will be followed up on at some point in time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Any questions from the audience? With that said, I would entertain a motion to approve this request.
I'd like to recommend that we table this until next month, if that's permissible. I haven't had a chance to read the document in its totality, and I don't know if you read this document?
I have not.
So I would like to table it so that our solicitor has an opportunity to read it, and we as well be better prepared for next time.
Very well. So you would like legal counsel to review? We haven't had an opportunity to review, Mr. Sanders, so I think that's a reasonable request. Does anyone else feel that way to table it just for now for legal review? Mr. Purnell? That's
yes.
I agree with Rob, and so I see Mary.
I agree also.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Soto. So we're just going to table this. Do we need a motion for that, Mr.
Yes,
Purnell?
please.
Okay, so let's entertain the motion. Robin, you made it. I need a second.
I'll make a second.
Okay, thank you. So,
Yeah, it'll be a motion to table, let me just get this
get the language.
right. Yeah. Motion to table the consideration of the agreement until August 21st. and to authorize the solicitor to review the agreement and advise of his comments.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Here's the vote.
Russ?
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Is there a deadline
No,
with that?
no. We just, obviously, we've been working on this a long time. We'd like to get it buttoned up, but, you know, the board wants to wait till next month, that's going to be fine.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Last but not least, folks, number 18 on the agenda, public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment, sir.
My name's Robert Pratchett, and I've been a resident since 1977. At last month's Board of Supervisors meeting, I read a statement concerning a public safety issue with clumps of snow being thrown back onto my sidewalk by the West Goshen Township snowplow drivers. Excuse me. This was the fourth time I raised this issue at a Board of Supervisors meeting. The first time I raised this issue, the board was totally dismissive of my claim. At the next meeting, I fully explained that once 2 lanes were clear of snow, there was no longer a snow emergency, and that the remaining 2 to 3 feet of snow could safely be cleared at whatever speed that would not create a safety hazard by throwing clumps of snow back onto the sidewalk. Since that meeting, the silence of this board has been deafening. It's curious that this board would ignore a public safety issue where residents could be injured by the hazard being created by this snow throwback. Therefore, I feel that my only alternative to try and resolve this problem is to go to Daily Local News and the Philadelphia Inquirer and make my case and present the documentation that I have accumulated over years to corroborate my claims and see if they are willing to report and or investigate why this board will not respond to the issues I have raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergstrom. I can only say that I did follow up with the township manager on this issue. We do have Mr. Bertolami here to address this. I understand your grievance about the snow. We did look into it, about the plowing. I've been assured that their tribe have done everything they can to not have that happen, and they cannot properly plow that area with having that done.
At last month's meeting, I asked for a reasonable explanation as to why this is only occurring on my property on Sylvan Road. And there was the only reasonable conclusion that could be drawn. It's intentional. It's been going on for 11 years. Only on my property on Sylvan Road.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Any other public comments? Mr. Ross.
Abbas Barry, 1613 Manley Road. In the last month meeting, I brought to your attention atrocious behavior by your township manager, zoning officer, and building inspector, and fire marshal. In addition, I'd like to bring it to your attention, some of the police report that I had read contains tampered document. These are not correctly done. These are totally false and perjured. Now, I have made an attempt to communicate with the police department. Every interaction that I have with the police department, it's like this, us against them. They don't know me. This was the first time they have ever met me. Now, whenever I bring this device with me, I record, they start conducting themselves properly. Previously, their actions were nothing but vulgarious. The only individual that I ever had positive contact with was Captain Stone. In the last meeting, your chief of police stood here so eloquently spoke about going to the Muslim Islamic Center at Holy Month of Ramadan. I don't speak for Muslim community, but as a member of the minority community, when an individual violates my civil right, deprivation of the law under the color of law, it affects me greatly. Your chief of police, last meeting, I attempted to communicate with him, and his communication to me was, why did you wait 1 year to bring it to the attention? I brought it exactly 45 minutes after the incident. I made a report. I asked for an incident report. Right after last month meeting, I went downstairs. While I was recording, I approached dispatch. I wrote my phone number and I said, I would appreciate if you can give this to the chief of police. If he wants to talk to me, I'll be more than happy to meet with him. To this day, I haven't heard anything. I have made every effort to be able to resolve this. All they had to do, treat me like a human being, not some foreigner. That's why I'm here. I will be here in every single meeting till this matter is resolved. I'm not afraid of anybody. You can check that with the District Attorney's Office, East Goshen West Town Police Department, FBI. I am not afraid of anybody. I will pursue this till the end. I think if they are so brave enough with a gun and a badge, they should also be held accountable. They don't understand the definition of certain legal terminology. Recording is permissible. Supreme Court has already ruled on that. I can record the officer in the commission of his duty. I have to do it openly and notoriously, which I have done. So if the chief of police wants to meet with me, I'll be more than happy to meet with him, but we're going to have this under the video. We're going to find out why these officers behave that way. There were another officer here present, he left. I met with Officer McGee, he was polite, took the report. I am not going to go away. This is not going to be swept under the rug. I'll be here in every single meeting till this matter is resolved. Sanitized minutes is not going to make me go away. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments? Open. You have a comment from?
I have one on a later note. I forgot to mention under the prior area, the historical commission is running a bus trip to the American Revolutionary Museum on the 21st, and we still have a few seats left. And the bus trip is $49. That includes the bus and your ticket into the museum.
Mr. Burnett, what date is that again? 21st.
That is the 21st Saturday. This Saturday. You need to get your reservation in if you're going to do it immediately.
Seats are going fast, folks. Okay.
That's the end one.
Are there any other public comments for this evening? Dr. Wood.
I'd just like to make a comment. We had a very good experience with the government and environmentalists at West Goshen business. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wood. Any other comments? With that said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.